Hey guys, welcome back to another tutorial. Today I wanted to talk about plate stacking, which is a technique that my great buddy Ardent has been absolutely knocking it out of the park with his recent alt mods, and also something that I've done a few times in the past for a handful of different mods, but most recently for this for the No and Beyond sniper. Plate stacking, it can definitely be a bit of a tedious process, but it allows for some really large shapes to be made, and it also really excels when you need large chunks of colors that you might not be able to get in Brickarms brews, whether because they're too thin or because you need some odd color like a yellow or blue. So carving is probably going to be saved for a different video, but for today at least I want to show you guys how to create these blocks to then carve from. So materials for these are pretty simple. You're going to need to know a bit of the hammering technique, preferably, which is the last video that I put up. But it's a lot of the same materials: razor blade, something heavy, glue, and then most importantly for this is whatever brick you want to get the colors from. If you're working for a larger area, obviously I'd recommend larger bricks, like 1x6s are really good, but if you're going with something smaller, you can get away with like 1x4s and 2x4s. You can see in the back some of the plate faces that I've already cut off for a different mod in the future, just some of these blue faces. But that's really what we're making with this, is just the edge of a brick. So whatever you have, whether it's like a 1x6 or a 1x4, you're just taking that and we're going to remove the two side faces from it. The start of this is pretty similar to the hammering method. I'll usually cut upside down just because it tends to hold the blade a bit better, but you're just resting the blade right before the face of the brick, trying to get that as symmetrical to both sides as you can, and just bashing down on them. So there we go. We got the face off. There's a little bit you can see on the sides of material to still cut off, but we'll deal with that after. For now, we're just going to repeat the process and get the other face of the brick off too. It definitely depends on the project, but typically you're only going to need 2 of these brick faces for a mod. These aren't sanded, obviously, but if you look at the thickness here in the center where the 2 faces meet, it's pretty close to the thickness already of what a Brickarm sniper is at. So if you can get these 2 flush, you're looking good. Sometimes you'll need to do 3 for like something wider or thicker. But yeah, now that you have your 2 faces and you make sure that they're roughly to the right size that you need, this is just onto the polishing stage, and then we'll glue them together. Polishing these is pretty slow, but it's definitely good to go slow and just make sure you take your time with it. For the first step, I would go through just with your razor blade and cut off these little edges. You can see the edges that have curved there. Just go in, pop those little edges off on all the sides. It's important not to sand. I'll mention sanding later, but you definitely want to wait until the very end to start sanding. Just getting through this little lip in the center. Definitely go slowly. You don't want to hurt yourself. But you can see now the bulk of this is gone, and it's just a few of these raised connection beams that are still on. We're going to repeat the process for the same side, getting any imperfections off, and just trying to cut off as much of the bulk as we can with just the razor blade. For sanding, I use 15,000 grit, but you can really use whatever you're comfortable with. The lower the grit, the faster it's going to sand. And it can definitely help to have just a bit of water in terms of sanding, but you just want to go slowly at it in these circular patterns and get the rest of the bottom flat. I'm going to do both at once, but whatever you're comfortable with. Once you've got both faces sanded, you're going to notice you'll have some imperfections around the edges. Just don't worry about those. Don't worry about that. Set your 2 faces together, do a rough test fit. You can see those little imperfections, that's from the sanding. You bevel the edges when you're moving around. But as long as when you press it together, like it would be when it's glued, it looks pretty flush, you're all set to move on to the next part. So you definitely want to liberally apply glue. You don't have to worry nearly as much about over gluing with this, because you have such a large area to glue onto. Or really just filling up the center with these fair bit of globs of glue. Obviously not too much that it's going to push out the edges, but enough that you want the whole thing to be able to be covered. Just pushing these together I'm going to hold it really tight and really try to get those center things to be filled. From here, you just want to wait a few seconds, let the glue dry. All right, so once it's dried for a little bit, we just want to polish up the edges, which is a pretty simple process. We're just going to grab our razor blade again and basically repeat some of the initial steps of just cutting back, going back a little bit from the edge, and just bash down on there. Repeat on the other side. And then that gets rid of all the curved edges that we got from sanding. You end up with this rectangle. You see that still has some more beveling. That got sanded more than I expected. So we're just going to go in there really quick with the razor blade, polish that up. Oh, and I didn't go further enough back. So there's definitely merits to trying sanding as little as possible, because again, it results in those bevels, which can definitely mess you up down the line. But it can also be very hard to cut those faces flush without sanding. But we're chilling here. We got a rectangle. From here, you go into carving, which I'm definitely going to put up a video soon. But this is the initial block that you can then carve the rest from. It helps to just have, if you're doing like a sniper, to have a sniper close by. You can kind of trace the outline and then sand away the edges. But yeah, I hate to leave it here, but carving and kind of like sculpting bodies is a whole other can of worms to open. For now, I just wanted to show you guys how to get these plate faces to the carving stage.